July 17th, 1994. The Rose Bowl, Pasadena, 94,000 people, 1 billion watching on TV. And one man standing over a ball, 60 feet from the goal, the entire World Cup. 32 years of Italian football history. Resting on his left boot. He runs up, he strikes it, and it sails, high, wide, over the bar, into nothing. The man who was supposed to be the greatest player in the world had just lost the World Cup for his country. But here's what nobody talks about. What happened to him after that moment is the real story. To understand what that miss meant, you have to understand what Roberto Baggio was to Italy. He wasn't just a footballer, he was a symbol. The kid from Caldogno, a small town in Veneto, who'd been playing on the streets since he could walk. At 15, Fiorentina paid the equivalent of $3 million for him. Before he'd played a single professional minute. That's how good he was. By 1993, he won the Ballon d'Or. Best player on the planet. Full stop. The ponytail. The Buddhist faith he'd converted to in his 20s. The way he moved. Like the ball was attached to his feet with string. Then came USA 94. Italy's tournament was, to be honest, a disaster on paper. Scraping through the group stage, ugly wins, a team that looked lost. And in match after match, when Italy needed saving, it was always Baggio. He scored in the round of 16, in the quarters, in the semis. He single-handedly dragged a broken squad to the final. The Italian press called him Il Divino Codino. The divine ponytail. He wasn't just playing in the World Cup. He was carrying it. The final against Brazil finished 0-0 after 90 minutes, extra time. Still nothing. Penalty shootout. The first World Cup final in history decided by spot kicks. Italy missed 2. Brazil scored 3. It comes down to this. If Baggio misses, Italy lose the World Cup. He picks up the ball. He places it on the spot. You can see it on his face. The weight of 40 million people, the weight of every goal he'd ever scored to get to this moment. He hits it. Too high, too wide. And Brazil win the World Cup. The image of Baggio. Head bowed, hands on knees, staring at the grass. Became one of the most famous photographs in sports history, not just in football, in all of sport. And in that second, the man who had saved Italy 7 times in 4 weeks was now the man who had cost them everything. That's the cruelty of it. That's the thing that makes this story worth telling. The Italian press was not kind. Some of those headlines. I won't repeat them here, but you can imagine. A country that had ridden on his back for a month turned in an instant. The phone didn't stop ringing. Strangers sent death threats. Former fans wrote letters that were barely coherent with rage. Here's what Baggio said in his autobiography, years later. That penalty haunts me still. It will do so forever. He didn't hide from it. He didn't spin it. He carried it. He kept playing. Seasons at Juventus, Milan, Bologna, Brescia. Still brilliant. Still capable of goals that made you forget everything else. But the miss was always there. In every interview for the next 30 years, someone would bring it up. And every time. Every single time. He answered the same way, calmly, without excuses. I missed it. It was my fault. I have to live with that. But here's where most people stop the story. The miss defined him publicly, but it didn't destroy him privately. And the reason is something most people outside Italy never knew. Baggio had converted to Buddhism in 1988, years before the World Cup, and his faith gave him a framework for what happened in Pasadena that very few elite athletes ever find. He spoke about it in interviews. How Buddhism teaches that suffering is not something to escape, but something to understand. That the miss wasn't a punishment. It was simply a moment. A single moment in a life full of moments. He raised money for landmine victims. He became an ambassador for the FAO, the United Nations Food Agency. He visited disaster zones. He built something meaningful from the rubble of his most public failure. That's not a redemption arc in the Hollywood sense. It's quieter than that, more honest than that. In 2024, 30 years after that night in Pasadena, Roberto Baggio was asked again, one more time, do you still think about it? And he said yes. He said he probably always would. But he also said something that I think is the whole point of this story. He said, only someone who has never really tried can afford to never have failed. Think about that for a second. This is a man who scored 318 career goals, who won the Ballon d'Or, who took Italy to a World Cup final almost entirely on his own in 1994, and the thing he is most remembered for is the one kick that didn't go in, and instead of running from it, he built his entire second life around it, not as a wound, as a teacher. The ponytail is gone now. He's in his 50s, quiet, thoughtful, as far from the Rose Bowl as a man can get. But if you look up that photograph, Baggio, head down, hands on knees, the Brazilian players already celebrating behind him. And you know this whole story. It doesn't look like defeat anymore. It looks like the beginning of something. If you've never seen the full story of how Baggio took Italy through that tournament,